With our three layers here from our last demo. So we have our dark, our medium, and our light. What I'm going to do is first I'm going to reorder these layers. So I'm going to put the medium layer on the bottom. I'm going to put the brightest layer with the smallest parts on the top. The second layer here with the middle amount of parts. And then whichever one you're going to use that has the most amount that's going to be showing, which I think is going to be this guy down here at the bottom. I'm going to put him at the bottom, right? Then the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to right click on this bottom layer. I'm going to say duplicate layer. Okay. And I'm going to take this copy and I'm going to put it all the way at the top. And the reason I'm going to do that is I'm going to put it up here and I'm going to hide it because I'm going to use this later in the demonstration. But it's just easier to put it up there now and sort of set it and forget it for later. Okay, so now what we're going to do is essentially we're going to punch holes in each of these layers so that we can see the layers below. We're going to keep just the pieces that we need. So maybe a more dramatic view would be let's make folders first. So I'm going to click on the top layer. I'm going to click on this little folder here because we're going to put things in groups. I'm going to click on this. I'm going to rename this group. If I right click on it, I can say, I thought I could say rename here. I guess not. I'll just double click on it. And I'm going to call this small side. I'm going to take this guy and I'm going to throw him inside the folder. There you go. So when I collapse this folder, he's inside the folder now. This one, I'm going to click on it. I'm going to put a folder right above it. I'm going to double click and I'm going to call this dark Windows. I'm going to grab this guy. I'm going to throw him in the dark Windows folder just like so. Collapse that folder. There we go. I'm going to click on this one last folder. I'm going to double click and I'm going to call this main wall like so. Grab this guy, throw him in that folder, collapse the folder. There we go. So now I have all three pictures inside these folders. And the reason I'm going to do this is because when I layer mask this, I'm actually going to layer mask the folder. And it's going to affect everything inside the folder, so I don't have to make a layer mask for each individual change that I make. It keeps it just a little cleaner. All right, so let's start with a window. So I'm going to open up the windows here. I'm going to click on my windows layer. I'm going to have to hide the layer above it here so I can see below it. And this is where it gets a little tricky, right? So this is the small side that has all this stuff in the folder here. I'm going to hide that window, and I'm looking at the dark Windows folder here. So now what I'm going to do is I need to select these windows because I just want the windows to appear. So you have all these different selecting tools. You can use your magnetic lasso if you feel good about that. You just click and sort of let it outline here. This is actually working pretty good on here, like so, right? But it gets a little bit bumpy. Oops. Here. All right, don't forget you can hit the escape key to get rid of that. Select, deselect. You can use just the marquee tool. And you can select some things this way. You could use the brush tool here, and you can brush in some of these areas to make some selections here. Don't forget, this is your regular selection, so when you click, it starts something new. If I click on the plus, I can add to a section. If I click on the minus, it removes sections like so. This is the same for every selection tool. For me, what I'm going to use is I'm going to use the polygon lasso tool. Say select, deselect. And I'm just going to outline these windows really quickly here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start here. I'm going to click once. I'm going to go to this corner. I'm going to click. I'm going to come down here. I'm going to click in this corner. I'm going to come over here, click. I'm going to click at the top. So now I've selected this whole window here. I'm going to go to Addition. I'm going to click down here. I'm going to click all this little guy down here because I want all this craziness. Here, here, and here. All right, now I don't want these bars because I want the bars to be in another piece. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my minus, which is this one. And I'm going to click out very quickly here, hopefully. I'm going to click out this piece here, so I'm selecting what I want to get rid of. So there we go. So I just erased that line there. I'm going to click here. I'm going to erase this part. And I am deselecting this part. Now you guys are going to be a lot more careful. I am being sort of fast and furious here. Oops. So you're going to try to be a little more careful with how you outline. There we go. So that's that. So then I'm going to get this crossbar here. So I'm going to come this way. So essentially, I first selected everything, and now I'm selecting things that I want to deselect. It's like a tongue twister, right? I'm going to get rid of this stool up here, too. Like so. Like that. And then maybe I'll come back in here. I'm going to say my add again. And I'm just going to add these little windows down here. All right, and again, you are going to be much more careful, much more slow, Oops, but for our demonstration here, I just want to get this ball rolling here. There we go. Let's just hit this last guy here, like so, like so, and like so. Perfect. All right, so now I have all these window parts selected here. So this is the part that I want to keep. Everything else is going to disappear. So I go to my folder here, like so. I'm going to click the layer mask button. Boom. So look what it did. If you look over here on the right, you can see all the white parts are the parts that it kept from that window here and here, right? And so this layer mask is masking everything in this folder. So now let's double click on our layer mask. So here, remember this menu here, I can see that I have some lines here that are a little bit messy. So I'm going to shift my edge a little bit. I'm going to expand my selection. So it's a big file, so it's going to take a little bit to jump here. So what it's doing is it's expanding the selection a bit, and then I'm going to feather my edges a little bit. Oops, a little too much. Again, there's a bit of a delay because the file is so large. My laptop is struggling here a little bit. There we go. So I'm just going to fuzz that edge just a little bit so that it's softer in there and it attaches in here. You know, if you want to take out these bars in here later, you can. Because again, all you need to do is go back here. Let's hit OK. All I need to go back here is click on my layer mask, go to my paintbrush, right? Zoom in. Let's make my paintbrush smaller. Paint with white. Oh, I'm sorry, with black. Sorry. Case mix waster. See, I can paint this back in here. Painting that in here. Let's get this back here. There we go. So that sort of lightens that up a little bit. Like here, like these railings look sort of weird. You know, it's so far in the distance that it's not going to make a huge difference, and I don't want to spend like hours and hours and hours painting all this out. But, you know, you get the idea that you can bring this back here like that. This one here, maybe these major ones here. I'm going to bring these back. I'm going to bring this guy back here. Like that, you know, you can use that same selection tool that I use because here my hand's a little shaky with my mouse. Lighten that up. All right, zoom back out. All right, so you can see how you're bringing that stuff back in here too. But all that's happening on this layer mask. So now let's say I wanted to change the contrast of my windows here a little bit. If I go down to here and I say curves, it's throwing the curves inside that folder. So to watch, whenever I just move things on my curves here, and let's just choose medium contrast. See how it just changed those things in these two windows here. So this change only happens in those windows because the curves is inside this folder, right? So when I collapse this folder like this, everything is inside this folder. Perfect. All right, so I'm going to go to small side up here. I'm going to make this appear right now. Put the properties away. I'm going to do the same thing. So I'm going to take this polygon lasso. I'm going to click here, 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 like so. Okay, so I just selected that. I don't know if there's anything else in here that I want to keep. You know, this, strangely enough, it's kind of an interesting part. Maybe I'll just hang on to this part. And I can always take it out later, right? Or I can add it later as well, so that's fine. So there's my two parts. So here on the small side, I'm going to hit layer mask. Boom. So here, now I just put these two light parts in here, and they're part of my window. So now this piece underneath, I have this piece on top. And then I have my main wall down here at the bottom. I'm going to, again, double click on here. I'm going to feather my edges a little bit. So it's just sort of a good idea to soften that a little bit, and maybe I'll shift my edge a little bit. All right, now these colors are way wrong. See, now this is way yellow and this is way cool here. So again, as long as I'm inside the folder, I can click on my black and white cookie and I can say, let's try color balance, right? And then I'm going to pull my yellow down, so I'm going to go to blue. So see how that cooled that off already? Maybe I'll take a little bit of red out of there too. A little more blue out of there. And then the magenta level is actually okay. So this is the poor man's curve, right? I'm just sort of adjusting those colors. I can adjust the levels on this if I want to post adjust here. So I can say levels. You know, it's actually pretty well flattened here. Oops. Double click that again and bring that back. There we go. So I just adjusted those levels over a little bit, so it made it look a little stronger that way, which I think looks pretty good. like so. And then here in my last main wall folder, so let's collapse this folder. Here again, you can see all those things inside that folder. In my main wall, I'm going to make, actually I'm not going to make much more of an adjustment there. This is pretty good for now. I think it's pretty good. So there you go. So then you're going to make adjustments to these two top layers. You're going to put all your pieces together and stick them together. Now, if you want to add a little bit of texture that sort of adds the whole thing together, this is where this guy comes into play. All right, I am going to show my top layer here. It's going to cover everything. And I want to make this line art. Now, the only problem is that the filter that I need is in the filter gallery. This is a little confusing here, so stay with me. It's in the filter gallery. Now, the filter, some of these filters that I want to use only work on an 8-bit image. That might mean nothing to you. All it means is that 16 bits has more colors, 8 bits has less. So once you're all done adjusting everything, change your picture to 8 bits. All right, the only reason you want to do that when you're all done is because if you make some color adjustments and things with 8 bits, you might get some banding and tearing in your picture. 16 bits is a better way to edit. But once I'm all done, I'm not going to change anything else. It should be fine. So now I'm going to be here on my top copy. I'm going to go to Filter. I'm going to say Filter Gallery. And I'm going to look for Sketch here. It's already open for me. And I'm going to use Stamp, right? And let's zoom out here. So for Stamp, what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull my lightness and darkness to 1, and I'm going to say smoothness to 1, right? Because if you move your lightness to darkness over here, it's too black and too heavy. So I'm just going to call that 1. And then down here, your smoothness, if you make too much smoothness, you lose your detail, and it gets all weird. So I'm going to make it 1 here as well. And then I'm going to say OK. So here we go. So this piece is blanketing the whole thing here. And now all I'm going to do is I'm going to go up here to multiply. And it took out all the white, but it left the black in there, which is kind of cool, right? It adds a little texture. If that's too much, I can just turn down my opacity a little bit. And that way it adds a little bit of extra tension to your picture, some outlining, some details. There you have it. So the last thing you're going to do is you're going to say save, don't forget, because you want to save with your layers in here, so your Photoshop PSD file. And then once you've saved, you're going to say File, Save As, and you are going to change this to a JPEG because you want it to be flat, and you're going to call it, whatever you want to call it, hallway. Let's save it on my desktop and say Save. I always like to pull my JPEG compression to its maximum, and I'm going to say OK. All right, now the only thing I forgot to do there is remember you want to crop your image because right now it's enormous. So let's say 7.5 by 11 is our pretty much our standard size. I'm going to lose a little bit on the edges here, but I'm all right with that. So then I'm going to say 150 pixels per inch, 7.5 by 11. I'm going to check this. Kapow. There we go. Let's zoom in a little bit. Perfect. All right, the one last thing I forgot to do, which you should probably actually do at the beginning, is you should align your layers. So what you should do is you should select, I'm going to select all 4 of my layers here. So I click on the first one, I hold down Shift, and I click on the last one. I'm going to say Edit. I'm going to say Auto Align Layers. I'm going to say Auto, which is fine. I'm going to say OK. And what this is going to do is it's going to try to line up all the lights and shadows in your images here, because sometimes your picture might be a little bit off if you weren't using a tripod or something shifted. That helps to line up those layers a little bit. But you should definitely do that at the beginning of the lesson and not at the end, because like here you can see I have to crop it again. There we go, because it lined everything up and it chopped a little bit off. Like here you can see there's some weird shadowing going on from those other layers. Yeah, like this layer on the top is a little bit wonky over here on this side. But if you align your layers at the beginning, that will work just fine. All right. That's all I got for you, I guess. So enjoy and good luck.